Hello and welcome to another episode of the Conversion of Granny Grumman. In this episode, my wife and I will be installing a ceiling with Havelock wool insulation. Here you'll see Leticia putting 7 evenly spaced marks on the cross members and then center punching them so we can drill them. The ceiling is going to be held up via 1/4-20 hardware via cross nuts, which I discovered from Far Out Ride, which is an excellent resource for anybody building a van. Using a spare carriage bolt, nut, a couple washers, open-end wrench, and vice grips, you can create a tool that crimps the cross nuts into place. Cross nuts have a pull-out strength of 1,215 pounds, so they are very, very secure. With all the cross nuts installed in the cross members, it's now time to start cutting the wood and shaping it for the ceiling. When I converted my first van, I came up with this technique where I install bolts into the cross nuts, hold the wood where I want it to go, then hit it with a hammer so that those bolts leave an impression in the wood, indicating exactly where I need to put a 1/4-inch hole so that I can put the hardware through to hold the wood to the ceiling. These planks attached to the cross members serve 2 purposes. First, they hold the plywood to the ceiling, and second, they hide the seams between the different pieces of plywood. After cutting each piece of plywood for the ceiling, I'll install the hardware into the cross nuts, then mark where they are on the plywood. After that, I'll use a round file and create a half-moon groove the exact size of the hardware. This allows each piece of plywood to be as close to each other as possible. Granny Grumman has 2 roof vents, so using a ruler and a straight edge, I'll mark out exactly where they are, put the ceiling back up, and then cut them out. After that, it's simply a matter of installing the tunnels for the vents, installing the vents, and then creating some framing so they look a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. With everything test fit, it's time to take it down and stain it. I'll be using an oil-based stain and wood sealer that's meant for decks. I used this same stain on my first van build and it's held up really well. The reason I decided to use it is I figured if I have any leaks in the van, at least it'll be waterproof and it won't get damaged, and that really helped me when I did get a leak in my first van build. I marked the plywood alphabetically and the cross member strips numerically with arrows facing in the direction of installation. That way, they're easy to reinstall once I'm done staining them. The directions state to apply a liberal amount of stain and then wipe off any excess within 15 minutes of application with a rag. I stained both sides of the plywood and the cross member strips to make sure that they're completely weatherproof. After letting the stain dry overnight, I used zip ties and netting to hold up the Havelock wool insulation. Once that's done, it's time to slowly and carefully reinstall the ceiling. I couldn't be happier with how the ceiling came out, and it's just one more big accomplishment that brings Leticia and I closer to moving into our tiny home.